Good morning, everyone. Okay. Welcome all to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Lake County. Too many distractions. Okay, is there no mic? I will speak up. Okay, no, I have no problem with that. Okay. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Lake County. I am Alexandra Ligon, your service leader for today, and my pronouns are she and her. I'm joined by Terry Sullivan at the piano with that lovely, lovely music. And our speaker is Reverend Janet Onnie, who will be live on Zoom with us today. And we thank Betsy and Dustin and Doug for our technical and AV support today. And please bear with us as things go along. Last week was an interesting time, so this one will be too. 11. Okay, please first let me remind you to please mute your cell phones if you have them. And I encourage you to read your bulletin or check our website, uulakecounty.org. for the many activities going on this week. New things are added and times and locations change sometimes. So each week's bulletin and the website are your best sources for current information. If you are interested in learning more about UU and UUCLC, consider signing up for our next orientation class on the sheet in the narthex. Next Sunday, Reverend Cynthia Snavely, who's with us here this morning, Reverend Snavely, will speak to us on Remembering Harvey Milk Day, May 22nd. The 9:30 discussion group will be Insight on the Tabletop Realm by Dustin Aiken. There will be a film about Harvey Milk, California's first openly gay public official. It will be on Saturday, May 20th here at 2 p.m. And please, everyone's invited, and bring friends and family, whatever. So I would like to invite Jane Hepting, if she's here. Are you okay? To share her thoughts with us about our fiscal year 2024 pledge drive, which is currently underway.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? I started attending UU services a few years ago because of the wonderful speakers that the congregation had lined up, and I learned a lot of things, and I was just really impressed with the congregation. Then I learned that it's non-creedal, and I heard its beautiful covenant about love and service, and I was hooked. I became a member, and I joined the Social Justice and Environment Committee. Our chair at the time, Russ Littlefield, made a comment. He said, UUs are the ones who show up. And show up we do. When the Trump administration put immigrant children behind bars, this congregation held a candlelight vigil. And then we had the Confederate general, the statue that the museum, Lake County Museum, wanted to bring here, 9 foot tall. And he was a general who was known for issuing the order that if any Union soldiers who were black were captured, they were to be killed. We take no prisoners. And so we marched in downtown Tiberias. It was a scary time. There were sheriff deputies with rifles up on the top of the parking garage roof. When George Floyd was murdered, we stood in front of the old county courthouse with candles. We stood in silence for over 8 minutes to relive Mr. Floyd's struggle to just breathe. When our state legislature was considering legislation to make voting harder, we waved signs in downtown Lady Lake. We were in front of the senator's office who sponsored that bill. And when the legislation passed, we delivered flyers to hundreds of minority voters urging them to get registered and to vote. When our state government banned abortion after 16 weeks, we invited a pro-choice speaker and had a record crowd. We had police protection here that day, too. This year, during Black History Month, we marched in 2 parades, wearing our Side with Love shirts and carrying Black Lives Matter flags. In March, we were a participant in the Eco Expo, which bravely and unequivocally declared that we must address climate change. You know, that's not a popular topic or idea in Florida. The installation of solar panels, our solar panels, tells the world that we are serious about the reduction of greenhouse gases. Earlier this month, we participated in a rally in Mount Dora against the banning of books in our schools. We held signs proudly declaring who we are. As long as we live in a world with propaganda that tells people to hate others and ignore science, we must speak out. We must show up. I am so proud of the love and courage and dedication to serving others that this congregation exhibits. That's why I pledge my financial support, and I invite all of you to do the same. Thank you.
Are there any other announcements from the floor? If not, we'll move on. So welcome again to everyone here with us today in the sanctuary. And Dustin, can we greet those joining us on Zoom? Good morning, everyone. We're glad you're here. We gratefully acknowledge the traditional lands of the Timucua Native peoples upon whose ancestral homeland we gather today. We are blessed with this land, and we pledge to care for it as our Mother Earth cares for us and for all living things. Turn it on. No, it's fine. Keep going. All are welcome here this Sunday. Thank you for sharing your Sunday morning with us.
We come together today in praise and thanksgiving for the gift of life itself. Let us gather in celebration of birthing and nurturing, the birthing and nurturing of individuals, of communities, and of ideas and ideals. Let our time together today be one of recognition. There is a kind of love we cannot live without. It is never too late, no matter our age or situation, to be grateful for all of the moments of being known, being cherished, being found. Let us worship together in gratitude. We light this chalice for those who give life to individuals and ideas, to celebrate those who have taken on the task of nurturing a young, a baby, a child, or a youth into adulthood, to celebrate those who have nourished the light of truth and compassion in growing minds and hearts, to celebrate those who have committed time, money, and energy to the growth of others in this world. We light this chalice to celebrate and hold dear this flame of love.
Each Sunday, we make time for those who wish to offer a joy, concern, or sorrow, or to set an intention for the coming days. If you would like to take part in our stone ritual, I invite you now to come forward in silence to place a stone or stones in the sand at either of the 2 stations, one in the front and one in the back. Following this time, anyone who has a joy, concern, or intention that you wish to share aloud with the congregation, please raise your hand and someone will bring the mic to you. Would anyone like to share aloud? Well, I'm a mother of four adult sons, and this is really happy to say because over the years we've been from young adults, we all get along better, everybody getting along better, and they all come free, they all have good jobs, and I'm just really proud of them. And one of them had to come text me, Mom, what would you like for Mother's Day? And I said, I don't know anything. I said, traditional stuff is fine, flowers and chocolate. And he sent me a box of brownies that you make yourself. A little packet of flowers that you put in yourself. And it was just funny. But he also put in a part of money. So we just need money. But I'm saying, is there anyone else? Okay. If there is anyone who has not been mentioned that you hold concern for, please feel free to name them aloud at this time. Those attending by Zoom may unmute briefly.
Dee Barbara, Gabby, Sylvia.
We will now enter into a time of silent meditation, being mindful of the joys and the concerns that we have heard. Take a moment to find a comfortable position and let the chime draw you into mindfulness. Terry's lovely music will bring us back. Please join me in reaffirming who we are by reciting together our congregational covenant found on the screen. Love is the spirit of this church, and through service, we live our principles. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
The slogan, Bread and Roses, originated in a poem of that name by James Oppenheim, which was published in the American magazine in December 1911, which attributed it to the women in the West. It's commonly associated with the textile strike in Lawrence, Massachusetts during January through March of 1912. It's now often known as the Bread and Roses strike. Here's the story. The power looms that thundered inside the cotton weaving room of the Everett Mill in Lawrence, Massachusetts, suddenly fell silent on January 11th, 1912. When a mill official demanded to know why workers were standing motionless next to their machines, the explanation was simple: not enough pay. The workers who had opened their pay envelopes that afternoon discovered their weekly wages had been reduced by 32 cents. A newly enacted Massachusetts law had reduced the work week of women and children from 56 to 54 hours. But mill owners, unlike in the past, cut workers' wages proportionally. For workers who only averaged $8.76 per week, every penny was precious, and 32 cents made a difference between eating a meal or going hungry. Word of the strike by the women of the Everett Mill swept through Lawrence's squalid tenements that night, and the following morning, the walkout cascaded through the neighboring mills. By the end of January 12th, more than 10,000 workers were out on strike. Women didn't shy away from the protests. They delivered fiery rally speeches and marched in picket lines and parades. The banners they carried, demanding both living wages and dignity, "We want bread and roses too," gave the work stoppage its name, the Bread and Roses Strike. As mill owners and city leaders violently pushed back, the city became increasingly unsafe. On February 10th, striking families sent 119 of their children out of harm's way to Manhattan to live with relatives or, in some cases, complete strangers who could provide food and a safe shelter. A cheering crowd of 5,000 greeted the children at Grand Central Terminal, and after a second trainload arrived from Lawrence the following week, the children paraded down Fifth Avenue. The children's exodus proved to be a publicity coup for the strikers, and Lawrence authorities intended to halt it. When families brought another 46 children bound for Philadelphia to the city's train station on February 24th, the city marshal ordered them to disperse. When defiant mothers still tried to get their children aboard the train and resisted the authorities, police dragged them by their hair, beat them with clubs, and arrested them as their horrified children looked on in tears. The national reaction was visceral and marked a turning point in the Bread and Roses strike. President Taft asked his Attorney General to investigate, and Congress began a hearing on the strike on March 2nd. Striking workers, including children who had dropped out of school at the age of 14 or younger to work in the factories, described the brutal working conditions and poor pay inside the Lawrence mills. 14-year-old Carmela Tioli shocked lawmakers by recounting how a mill machine had torn off her scalp and left her hospitalized for 7 months. After the children's testimony, public tide turned in favor of the strikers for good. The mill owners were ready for a deal and agreed to many of the workers' demands. The two sides agreed to a 15% wage hike, a bump in overtime compensation, and a promise not to retaliate against strikers. On May 14th, the 9-week strike ended as 15,000 workers gathered on Lawrence Commons, shouted their agreement to accept the offer. This was not just a victory for Lawrence workers. By the end of March, 275,000 New England textile workers received similar raises, and other industries followed suit. The Bread and Roses strike. We show up.
Both its meaning in our lives and its impact on the world. There are several ways to donate listed on the screen, or you can leave your donation in the wooden box in the narthex, just outside the sanctuary door. Thank you for your donation today. So let's sing together number 357, Bright Morning Stars, all 5 verses. Stand as you like, as you're able. Sorry. Morning stars are rising. Bright morning stars are rising. Bright morning stars are rising. Day is breaking in my soul. Where are our dear mothers? Oh, where are our dear mothers? Oh, where are our dear mothers? Day is breaking in my
I have mixed feelings about preaching on Mother's Day, balancing terror and wonder. Terror, because I know that no matter what I say, at best, I'm going to leave somebody out. At worst, I'm going to engender painful memories. I worry about the responses of women who have, by chance or by choice, not had children, or have buried their children, or given them up, or lost them to circumstances way, way beyond their control, or simply don't like them. I worry about the men left out of this mythology who are raising children alone or in partner with another man, or the men who have unknowingly fathered children. I worry about non-binary combination of parents not acknowledged. I worry about causing you pain by bringing up memories you may have of your mother. But I also view Mother's Day with a wonder that has been repressed for quite some time. For many of us, it is our mother who is the first divinity for us. She is literally our life giver, our nurturer. The bad thing about the perfect mother myth perpetuated by the greeting card people is that children believe it and demand it of their mother. Our mother was God from which all blessings, nourishment, comfort, care, all blessings flowed. There's a story of Egyptian men who were awed by maternal behavior patterns, wondering why women did what they did to maintain the race. Maxims written about 1500 BCE said, and I quote, "Thou shalt never forget thy mother and what she has done for thee. For she carried thee long beneath her heart as a heavy burden, and after thy months were accomplished, she bore thee. 3 long years she carried thee upon her shoulder and gave thee her breast to thy mouth, and as thy sighs increased in her heart, never once allowed her to say, 'Why should I do this?'" Managing the transition from God to fallible human being requires a child to face a crisis of faith. Few of us manage this crisis well. This is compounded by our culture blaming mothers for whatever goes wrong. Beginning with Freud, many psychiatrists and other mental health professionals have been more than happy to lay the blame for their patients' problems on their mothers. The folklore of the mental health profession seems to be, if you want to understand a patient's pathology, invite the mother in for a visit. I marvel that any of us are as intact as we apparently are. In fact, each of us has certain circumstances that will make this day a powerful one, for either joy or sorrow, praise or forgiveness. Is there anyone here who is completely neutral about Mother's Day? I'm not. And that's why I finally decided to address this power. I've had two experiences that made me think about some aspects of mothering not normally found in the Hallmark pantheon of greeting cards. First, I went to Cleveland to meet my 5-month-old grandnephew, Gabe Kilmer Roccaforte. Cleveland was having an unusually beautiful spring that year. Not only did I experience the glories of Mother Nature, they were at her most glorious, the lilacs and the flowering crab trees and the tender green of the grasses and the trees. It was in this delirium of mellowness that Gabe and I met and bonded in the cauldron of family. His mommies were tired, but not too tired to disabuse me of any notion that the Hallmark Mother's Day bore any resemblance to the reality of their lives. After dinner on my last night, my niece sent me an article written by Sarah Liss. It describes the phenomenon of lesbian dad syndrome, the condition of feeling like an imposter, a fake, experienced by the non-gestational half of two-mom couple. Some of these feelings were rooted in the deep anxiety that I have no real place as a parent, that in the absence of a biological connection, I wouldn't know how to love my kid. That without that innate tie, our bond would be brittle and fraught. Good heavens, I thought, is this what my niece is feeling about her role as a new parent? The article continued. More than anything else I've experienced, motherhood has made me feel profoundly alienated from straight people and straight culture. I've been forced to confront the depressing reality that when babies and mommy culture are involved, heterocentricity is almost always the rule. Almost always the rule. My niece, who was not the birth partner, apparently has experienced what Liz writes. The realm of parenting is alarmingly gendered, alarmingly binary. It's tricky to navigate a zone where a mom is not only assumed to come as part of a match set with a dad, but is, without fail, the person who carried and birthed her kid. So here were two women in my family who were lost in the wonder of bringing a child into the world, nurturing him and watching him grow. Here were two people surrounded by a loving family who are lost in the terror of a legal system that does not recognize the legitimacy of one of my grandnephew's mommies. Under the present conditions, my niece cannot legally sign a permission slip for her son to go on a field trip. This makes me weep with rage and frustration. I can't find a greeting card for this. The second experience that made me think about mothering was an article in The Sun, which is a marvelous magazine for people who like the written word without cartoons or advertisements. Heather Kern Lanier put her experience of parenting a child with disabilities in the context of language. The article is entitled The R Word. She says, even as the 1977 President's Committee on Mental Retardation confirms that all people have a right to, quote, a share in the ever-expanding American dream, unquote, it describes them in terms we use for products we'd like to send back. Retarded, defective, slow in mind, deformed and misshapen, spastic, epileptic. Lanier continues, we have come a long way since 1977, but not far enough. I read again and again in contemporary reportage the words birth defect. Some kids receive stuffed bears in their bassinets on their first day of life outside the room. Others get medical labels of rejection. When I call my daughter's pulmonary valve stenosis a heart condition rather than a heart defect, I don't care what some Ivy League linguists say. My term creates a cushion around her like a plush blanket. Her body is cradled in acceptance. The word defect is a dagger. Consider parenting a child where the language the world uses to describe your child is a dagger rather than a plush blanket. Even the wordsmiths in the greeting card industry have gone silent in the face of these mothers. Mother's Day is no time to romanticize parenthood. Parenting is a down-to-earth process if there ever was one. I'm with Bruno Bedelheim, who advocated for good enough parenting. He felt that perfection is a dangerous and destructive ideal, and one that is partially corrosive as a centerpiece around which to build family life. It's particularly corrosive. One of the most important gifts that mothers give, or fathers too for that matter, is the gift of modeling how to love and care and stay connected to others in spite of human flaws and frailties that crop up in our relationships. A scene sticks in my memory of me visiting my mother when she first received the diagnosis of pancreatic cancer. My mom was an RN and a head nurse at that. She wasn't much given to sentimentality, but was as susceptible to societal expectations as the rest of us. When I arrived in her hospital room, she burst into tears and asked if I could ever forgive her. For what? I asked. For abandoning you, she replied. And she told me the story of my early childhood, how her younger brother Bill had been killed during World War II, which devastated her mother, my grandmother. Here was this new baby, me, and my mother needed to work to augment my dad's on again, off again employment. So she shipped me off to her mother, my grandmother, figuring she'd solve the problem of childcare and grief all in one fell swoop. If nothing else, my mother was a pragmatist. Except one of her colleagues told her she would live to regret abandoning her child. And apparently she did. For me, well, I have an old photo showing me at about 3 years old. I'm in a starched dress at the front of the farmhouse, looking as sad and confused as I've ever seen on a person's face. It still unsettles me to see that photograph. So I guess I did know that my mother left me for what seemed like long stretches of time. But before this gets too maudlin, let me say that these were the same grandparents who loved me and gave me the passion for community that I have today. They encouraged and modeled self-reliance. They gave me the freedom to develop what creativity and imagination I brought to the table. It was not a bad trade-off, except for my poor mother's guilt for not living up to the mythology of what a mother should be. My mother did exactly what poet Netta Gillespie described. I hurl you into the universe and pray. And for that, I will always be grateful. In her book entitled Mother Warrior Pilgrim, Jane Sherrod confesses that when she became a mother, she found herself in the midst of a war. I felt like a foot soldier, she writes, untrained and unarmed, whose only weapon was a plethora of useless mythologies regarding what it meant to mother. Mothers are, indeed, warriors in the sense that Don Juan defined the word, someone who balances both terror and wonder. Mothers embark on no maps, They embark on this journey with no maps, no instructions. They must cover long and hazardous distances. Their final destination is always in doubt, and the journey is for the rest of their lives. In this sense of pilgrimage, it struck me that all Unitarian Universalists, regardless of gender identity, are mothers. Some of us have birthed children. Some of us have mothered other people's children. Perhaps we have birthed a book or a painting, a garden or a song. Somewhere, sometime, we've all sown seeds of gladness. Even now, we are nurturing ideas birthed long ago. But unlike other religions that are frozen in time, we believe that revelation is not sealed. Process theology teaches us that we are in a constant state of change. Translated into maternal terms, I quote Florida Scott Maxwell. No matter how old a mother is, she watches her middle-aged children for signs of improvement. It could not be otherwise, for she is impelled to know that the seeds of value sown in her have been winnowed. She never outgrows the burden of love, and to the end she carries the weight of hope for those she bore. Isn't that what we're doing here? I believe that's why we're in this community of a living tradition. We are looking at these ideals, these children, and helping develop them. We're trying to improve them, making them ready and relevant to the times we live in. And in doing this nurturing, we are carrying the weight of hope for the fruition of our ideals of justice and compassion in human relations. There is a Unitarian Universalist slogan: nurture your spirits, help heal the world. On this Mother's Day, I would encourage us to flip that slogan, to heal our own spirits of unrealistic expectations of perfection, concentrating instead on nurturing the world. Let us hurl ourselves and our children and our grandchildren and our Unitarian Universalist ideals into the universe and pray. Amen. And now we take our leave. Before we gather here again, may each of us bring happiness into another's life. May we each be surprised by the gifts that surround us. May each of us be enlivened by constant curiosity. And may we remain together in spirit till the hour that we meet again. Please rise as you are able and join me in our chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, warmth of love, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. As we sing our congregational leave-taking song, I invite you to raise your hands to send your energy outward to your neighbors, your community, your nation, and the wide world.